Welcome to the MJT Football Podcast. We're back again this week to talk about a bunch of topics around the NFL. But first, let me introduce you to my co-hosts, the J and the T and MJT, Joe Morley, Tony Tucker. Joe, I know you're doing great, man. How you feeling?
What are you talking about? I'm just an average guy right here, ready to talk football. Nothing exciting going on.
Just another day, huh? And Tony Tucker.
We should have played some Taylor Swift today. I'm just in that mood.
I can clip that in. Put some Taylor Swift right here. And Tony Tucker, how have you been, man? I know that the fantasy semifinals didn't go amazingly.
It did not, but Joe, you should remix the Karma song. Karma is a Raiders fan or whatever that whole bit was that was going on. Enough about the Raiders. We're going to talk about them, I'm sure, plenty during the show. Huge couple victories for them. But I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but the Chargers beat the Bills, covered the spread, and get to keep their draft position. So the team might not be into moral victories, but this guy's into moral victories, and they look good. They only lost by 2 points? So I'll take it. I'm fine with it. Just keep that draft position up so that they can trade back. So
when you don't let teams put 60 on the board, it's a good day.
It's a great day. It's a great. But here's the thing, real quick. In my area, there are so many Raiders fans, and I'm out and about in the world. And how many Raiders fans came up to me and said, like, man, finally got rid of your coach. And I just shook their hand and said, thank you. Thank you for what you did. Way to go.
That was so long ago. Why are we still talking about that? That was like 20 NFL games ago at this point.
Mike, can you just thank the Raider fans? The Raiders over the last 2 weeks have just been giving gifts out for Christmas. They gave the Chargers a new coach. They gave everybody a great Christmas day by knocking off the Chiefs on Christmas morning. So just sit there and enjoy it for a little bit.
Karma is a pirate. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Raiders a little bit more and their big win over the Chiefs. We're also going to talk about the backup quarterbacks taking over the NFL. I don't know if you guys saw the news. Russell Wilson's been benched. Sam Howell's been benched, amongst others. We're going to do a little bit of Rookie of the Year talk. That's become an interesting topic here. We have 2 games left in the season. The MVP race and ranking our top 3 teams at the end of the episode. So stick around for that if you want to know who we think the top 3 teams are in the NFL as of today. Starting with our first topic here. Bringing in the backups. I believe that was the name of like a podcast that you recommended me to one time, Tony. Bringing the backups. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Very funny comedian. I'm blanking on what his name is right now, but he was obsessed with backup quarterbacks, so he would just do podcasts about backup quarterbacks. Eric Hellwig, I think his name is.
Eric Hellwig. This is Eric Hellwig's favorite season of NFL football in history. We have half of the NFL teams fielding backups this weekend, potentially. Trevor Siemian, Aiden O'Connell, Joe Flacco, Bailey Zappi, Taylor Heineke, Gardner Minshew, Mason Rudolph, Easton Stick, Jake Browning, Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Nick Mullins, maybe Case Keenum. I guess CJ Stroud practiced today, so he's on his way back. Maybe Will Grier gets out there in favor of Easton Stick at some point in the game. And Ryan Tannehill, who became a backup now, could be put back into the game if Will Levis can't go this weekend. We're talking about potentially 15, 16 backups taking the field on Sunday this week. Reaction, Joe, to, especially the Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, and now Russell Wilson benchings.
Well, the Russell Wilson one pisses. I love it because I don't love the Broncos, and anything to stir up the Broncos is a good thing. But I hate it as watching it as a player standpoint, because everybody always bitches about the players holding out for more money, holding out for this, and the owners are quick to call the players out. But they're benching Russell Wilson. One, okay, he's not as good as what they thought he was going to be coming in, but mainly because of money, right? They don't want to risk him getting injured and then having to pay him more money over the next 2 years. They can get rid of him for cheaper next offseason, and it makes great sense in business. But as a player and as a league that's always saying we care about player safety, we care about what the players are thinking, this is just one way to take more money out of their pockets, and this is why players hold out. But then again, F the Broncos, because I don't give a damn. And Russell Wilson, we talked about it when I told you when Russell Wilson signed with the Broncos, it wasn't going to work out. And now they brought in Sean Payton. They made him the scapegoat all damn year, and he's been horrible. I had an argument with Bronco fans like 3 weeks ago where I said, they were like, Russell Wilson's back. I go, no, he's not back. Perrine and the rest of those running backs are just running hard. If it wasn't for Sutton, he wouldn't look as good as he did right now. Sutton making all those damn catches out there. But Russell Wilson, I don't know if he goes to another team next year or not.
He just calls it right then and there. It is interesting because with the Raiders win over the Chiefs, the Broncos are still in the division race as well.
Yeah, they're four outcomes away from winning the AFC West or going to the playoffs.
And they're benching their starter, Tony.
Okay, so Joe's talking shit, and the Raiders did the exact same thing. And who was the backup quarterback for the Raiders last year? Jarrett Stidham. Guess who's the backup quarterback for the Broncos this year? Jarrett Stidham. This is the exact same thing the Raiders did last year, is what they're doing to Russ. It is financially sound to do this. If you are moving on from a guy, why are you putting him out there where you're going to have to guarantee him another $38 million? Like, are we supposed to cry because he's already going to get $36 million or whatever guaranteed just for being on the roster or whatever? And now that they would have to give him another one if he can't pass a physical as of like March 12th or something like that. So I understand why they're doing it. Also, like, this was never, all of us have said this, like, this was never going to be a long relationship between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. Like, it just, from the moment he got there, he was making it seem like Russell Wilson was auditioning everything he did. We got to, be less mayoral where we're kissing babies and doing all this stuff and making him wear wristbands and taking away his office. Like, he is trying to get it back to what he had when he was with the Saints. And it's all about football. And Russ is about his brand and football. And that's not what he wants. Like, Drew Brees was a great quarterback forever. And then it wasn't until year 20 where he started doing Untuck It commercials. Like, it wasn't like, but Russ, that's not Russ. Russ is doing all sorts. And in some people's opinion, too much. So, like, Russell Wilson will be fine. I made a list, we'll take time later if you guys are interested, of all the teams that might be in the quarterback market. And then the fact that there's only like 5 NFL starting quarterbacks that may be available for trade or on the free agent market. Like, Russell Wilson will have a job somewhere next year.
So there's a market for Mr. Unlimited.
There has to be. There has to be. Look around. Like, he's not super unlikable. Like, for whatever reason, Carson Wentz was just out of football this year. And the only thing I can chalk that up to is that he just wasn't, like, well liked. He should have been on a team this year. Like, Carson Wentz for the Jets would have been way better off this year with Carson Wentz than they were with what they had.
Oh, I think definitely. Yeah, I was about to say, I think definitely. And I'll let you go first, Joe, because I was going to transition us here.
Well, I was just going to say, I know, Tony, I know that I made a video about this. Is exactly the same thing the Raiders did last year to Derek Carr. And I made the video. I said, if Jarrett Stidham's on your team and you're a starting quarterback, you ain't going to be there for much longer. Just remember that. So if your team brings in Jarrett Stidham, like if the Chargers bring in Jarrett Stidham, in an offseason or two from now, just know that Justin Herbert's on his way out. But I called the Raiders out on this last year, Tony. It's not like I'm sitting here going, no, I thought the Raiders did this. It was dirty when they did it to Derek Carr. Even if you want to move on from the player, I believe it's a dirty tactic and a dirty trick in the contract, and it's just the way it is in the NFL. It's just a business thing. But I'm not sitting here just calling the Broncos out. I called the Raiders out for it too last year.
I just think it's crazy that you're a couple steps away from winning the division, and like the Chiefs, I think, are going to win one of their last 2 games. I think it's going to be against my team. But crazier things have happened in the NFL, and that's the crazy part to me. The Raiders last year were done. Like, it's over. Season's done. There's no chance. The Broncos are right there to where if they win one game and the Chiefs somehow lose this week, you're literally playing for the division the next week with Jarrett Stidham now instead of Russell Wilson. And Russell Wilson is still dressing out, so maybe he's still if that situation did unfold, he could get in there. But I have to ask the question. For one, is this the one? This has got to be one of the worst trades ever. But is this the worst trade of all time? Russell Wilson in a 4th round pick for Locke, Fant, Harris, Cross, which was a 1st round pick, Mafe, which was a 2nd round pick, Tyreek Smith, which was a 5th round pick. These picks also turned into Devon Witherspoon at 5th overall for the Seahawks, and a guy that Tony liked out of the draft a lot, Derek Hall, in the 2nd round. Is this the worst trade ever, Tony? And you said that you had a list of teams that might trade for him. What can the Broncos realistically even recoup out of this by trading Russ?
So I would say what makes it even worse is the fact that they're still paying Nathaniel Hackett, I believe, for coaching. They then had to give additional draft picks away to bring in Sean Payton to try and save the situation, which that's not happening. So it's like it only compounds the issues that they had with the trade. I guess it's the worst trade ever. Like, I didn't really do any research or thought into this. I still just think the worst trade will forever be the Vikings trading away Herschel Walker for all those picks back in the day.
Whole draft.
Because it's not really like, it's more about what you do with the picks that you get and the players and stuff that you turn into. Now, if the Seahawks are able to, or would have been able this year, which they want, it seems like the reporting I've seen that what they want to do was bring in Anthony Richardson. Then maybe Anthony Richardson up there has sort of the miracle run like Russell Wilson had early on, Legion to Boom. The defense is something. So I don't know if it's the worst trade ever, but it is definitely one that is like, I mean, Deshaun Watson, we're talking about the same time as like, these are 2 trades where you're seeing teams that are desperately trying to stay relevant and compete rather than doing it the old-fashioned way where it's like, hey, we're just going to get in the draft. We're going to do our homework. We're going to hire the right coaches. Everybody's trying to have the quick fix, and they're mortgaging away big parts of the team's future. I think Sean Payton's in a better position to sort of like band-aid that than a lot of other coaches would. But Kevin Stefanski has Joe Flacco out there.
They're doing great too.
And they're doing great.
But remember when they made this trade, nobody goes back and remembers it because the NFL media and everybody they won't admit it now, and after a couple of years they won't admit it. But everybody said the Broncos are a quarterback away, and they need to bring a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in. So I don't blame the Broncos for making the trade. And then they had new ownership at the time. And they gave him the brand new deal. What a great job by Russell Wilson's agent at that time before he even got there to sign the new deal, right? And then you look at what the Seahawks got out of it. And I'm with Tony. If the Seahawks would have won something or went to the Super Bowl or something in the first 2 years, then maybe we could be like, okay, they won the deal. But I mean, really, I think it's just evened out, and we got to see how the other 2 draft picks from last year become. But as worst trade in the NFL history, Tony hit it. You got the Herschel Walker one. You got the Ricky Williams one, but you got to remember the 49ers helped you bail out any other bad trade out there with Trey Lance and what all those draft picks turned into. So, but that's my thing. But the Broncos are owned by the guy who owns Walmart, right? So what a bad 2 months for him right now to lose Russell Wilson and Gail Lewis within the last 2 months. Holy shit.
Well, he bought into this, right? He bought into this knowing what he was buying into, bought the team with Hackett and Wilson in place. That was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers. That was supposed to be the championship-winning quarterback that they were one quarterback away from getting. And I remember the day it just completely plot twisted on his head. It went from, nope, Rodgers is not going to Denver, and Russ is in. Russ is being traded right now. It was nuts.
Well, I'm kind of with Joe on this one, and I'll say that I don't give a shit. I was on that train too. I was like, hey, they need a quarterback, and this defense is ready to go. And I think we've seen that for the most part over the past 2 years. Last year, it's kind of crazy how what Sean Payton has said is accurate about Nathaniel Hackett. Like, nobody wants to go back. Everybody buried Sean Payton for the comments he made about the organization under the prior head coach. But like, it's kind of bearing to be true. Like, look at what happened with the Jets this year and the way the offense is worse than it was last year. And so, like, I guess like the Broncos and where they're at right now is like, they're in a fine position. They're almost exactly where they were before, but this time coming out of it, I believe they have a better coach for the situation than where they were at in like the previous situation. But again, I'm still thinking like if this team got the right quarterback in there, if Kirk Cousins goes to the Broncos next year, this Broncos team is a lot better.
They're getting Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill combo deal coming over.
Not to turn this into a Bronco talk because we've been talking about the Broncos more, but go back 2 off seasons ago. John Elway screwed up. He made 2 bad decisions. One, Russell Wilson over instead of and not pulling and not getting Aaron Rodgers in there, and 2, when they hired Nathaniel Hackett over O'Connell, right? Because it was between Nathaniel Hackett and O'Connell for that job right there. Imagine what they could have been now if they would have had O'Connell and Aaron Rodgers.
And wasn't like Avaro up in that too as well? Or was that the next year? I think that was the next year.
I think that was the next year.
That was the next year. Yeah, that was when they got Sean Payton. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. What were the teams that you had listed for Russ potentially, Tony?
So it's not that I have teams listed for Russ, but so if we go through, and I'll do this very quickly. These are the teams in 2024 that I think need a quarterback. The Falcons, the Vikings, because Kirk Cousins is not under contract. He could return there. The Bears, everything seems to be pointed that they're going to start over. Commanders, Patriots, Raiders, Broncos, and I put question marks next to the Titans. Teams that have a bridge quarterback in place, Saints, Seahawks, Rams. I know we don't like to say this, but Matthew Stafford, how many more hits can this guy take? I don't think many. And Sean McVay is going to want to start looking. He already tried this past offseason. Giants, the Jets will have 1 more year of Aaron Rodgers, even though Rodgers is like, I'm playing till I'm 50. And the Steelers. I think Kenny Pickett is a bridge quarterback. I think even if he comes back next year, I think that they could be looking. That's that's 14 teams.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That don't have it. And then this is the potential like guys that are available. Baker will be available, but I think he stays with the Bucks. Cousins, Fields, Wilson, and Tannehill.
And the draft. That's all you got.
And then you got about five people in the draft that are draftable in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably more than that, right? There's probably like, you know.
And how did you not just mention Jimmy G is going to be out there again?
Because he's not a startable quarterback in the NFL. Like he was not anywhere except for the 49ers. I don't think he can. He might be able to start in like Kevin Stefanski's offense or something like that, where it's just super QB friendly, you know, and a good offensive line in front of you. But he's not a starting quarterback in the NFL. Those other guys I named can start and can win you games, and you can be competitive and stuff like that. But essentially, Russell Wilson is going to have a job. Like somewhere, somebody's going to look around and go, "Oh, we're better off with Russell." But I don't ever think Russell will be like the franchise guy where you're giving him lots of money and saying, "This is our quarterback for the next 5 years."
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember a couple years before he even got traded, like the New York Giants and the Bears were like heavily rumored and connected to trying to get him in to both of those franchises. It's going to be interesting how it unfolds here at the quarterback position. We're saying 15 open spots, potentially only 10 caliber players that are worthy of filling those spots. We have another season with a lot of backups playing in the league. The only place that Jimmy G is going to be starting next year, Joe, is starting on that post-game broadcast crew when they're talking about Thursday Night Football every week.
I think it'd be funny if he came in and tried to replace Tom Brady at Fox. Like right away, like Brady goes there, and then they're like, "Oh, we just signed an understudy, Jimmy G," and Tom Brady's like, "I can never get rid of you."
Have them call games together, but every time that Jimmy G talks, like Brady talks over him, like cuts him off in the middle of his set.
They just leave him in the wings in the backup, like he's dressed up, hair and makeup, ready to go on camera, just as Brady's backup. If he just like, you know, pulls a vocal cord or something.
Speaking of Brady, I've been saying that he's got to be the change within the Raiders organization. I mean, they're 7-8 now, Tony. Did you hear? They're 7-8. This team is on the uptick. But all jokes aside, down go the Chiefs. Las Vegas Raiders upset Kansas City this week, 20-14. I'm just going to let you go, Joe, before we get into this conversation about Antonio Pierce and Jack Jones and all these guys they brought in. I'm just going to let you go. You have the floor. Raiders, Chiefs, your reaction.
Raiders, Chiefs, for my reaction?
Yeah.
What about it? It's just a normal game. Nothing that out of the unordinary, nothing that anybody didn't think was going to happen. Everybody knew the Raiders were going to go in there, be the better team, and knock off the Chiefs. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. This Raider team is just a very good, solid team and one of the best teams in the league, and probably, could end up winning the AFC West.
You've come on here and gone on like impressive 90-second rants over way less of events in the NFL. And this time they beat the Chiefs for the first time in 10 fucking games. And you come on here and go, yeah, no big deal. Raiders are great again.
Did you not see the performance they did against your team the week before? Were you not entertained, Mike? Did you not sit there and go, you were there live, first row, right there watching how great the Raiders are? Right here. I can take this hat off now, Tony said, because the Raiders are great again. Or you said it. I don't know. One of you guys said it. But I could take this hat off and just sit here. Well, I better put it back on because this hair looks like shit. But look, Jack Jones coming in. The attitude is there. The defense is there. We don't got an offense, but everything else is there but the offense, and that will come in time. Getting back to it, and you guys know this, being in the AFC West, there's one team that's run the AFC West, and you cannot win the AFC West. You cannot improve your franchise until you can prove that you can beat the Chiefs. And none of us have been able to do it consistently. And it's just, and even it's one game. It's one game that the Raiders won in the last 3 years since 2020 or 2020, whatever. So I'm excited about it, and I can see it. But this is what we have to get. This is the goal. So right now, when you beat the Chiefs, guess what? Antonio Pierce, you just became the head coach because you did something that nobody else can do, but you got to continue to do it going forward.
That's what I was telling you and Tony in our chat is they should hire him if they pull off this win. Or maybe I think I might have just texted that to you, Joe. But AP scares me, honestly. He's making the Raiders have that attitude. Like everyone made the jokes about the Patriot way coming to Vegas and failing. But the Raider way is what I fear most as a fan of a team that's a rival to the Raiders. I mean, you think of like the old school 49er teams, some of these early 2000 Ravens teams, they just beat the shit out of you. And that's what the Raiders have famously done. Even if they aren't winning games, they still just beat the shit out of you. And I feel like Pierce instilling that culture is more frightening than any Devontae Adams move you can make.
So I think that it's Pierce's job unless they could get Jim Harbaugh. Like, unless you can get an actual legitimate coach who's going to come in there and set your organization on a winning direction, I think Antonio Pierce is the guy, right? Like, would Ben Johnson be able to come in there and do something? Like, he probably would be okay, but not what the Raiders need. And I think that the Raiders have had back-to-back coaches that they've given these contracts to, and Gruden and McDaniels, as they're guys like dictators, where it's like, I'm the smartest. I know exactly how everything is going to be and how it's going to go, and there's one way to do it. It's like Antonio Pierce comes in and it's more about just like, hey, I'm going to bring attitude and fun and everything else. And you need that. But at the same time, you have to let the people that do year-round scouting, you have to let them do their job. And when you get those people and you get the drafted players in there, then that's when they get to come in and they get to play and be a part of the culture. Like, that's the scary thing for the teams in the AFC West is that Antonio Pierce would actually just get out of the way of the front office and let intelligent, well-researched people make the right decisions and stop picking based off of like just, what's the sexiest play we could make right now. They don't need that. No. Who comes in and fits the identity of what we're trying to do? Because if I've seen anything in the last 2 weeks, you guys hit on Zamir White. Like, Josh Jacobs can go. You don't have to spend that money on a running back. I think he'd be fine next year. It's just another long list of running backs from that draft class that are way better than Isaiah Spiller. So like, we just look around. Oh yeah, check, ding.
Drafted
ding.
what, one pick before?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. They trade in front to go get him. But like, even Pacheco is in our division and crushing it. The Raiders would be foolish to go, oh, what we actually need to do is go make another big splashy hire. Like, to me, that would be something where it's like, if this were 1 or 2 games, sure. But it's not 1 or 2 games. It's like you have a core of people on this team that believe, and that's your starting block. Like, that's how you have to be able to like win in the NFL, and the Raiders have that.
Tony, and what is he in 7 games? He's has the second highest winning percentage as a Raider head coach in the last 35 years. That's how bad it is. You know who has number 1? Rick Bisaccia. It's Rick Bisaccia, and then Antonio Pierce. And I think you hit it right on there, Tony. Like he's laid back. It's the new NFL. Players aren't the old Patriot way, all that stuff where you're getting yelled at. Like you and I, or whoever played football back in the day, you guys know that the old school coaches will get in your face, grab your face mask, yell at you. The players don't respond to that kind of stuff anymore. You don't see that. That's not this new way of coaching and stuff like that. You have to be gentle, kinder, and let the players do their thing, or else you're going to turn them off. But I think Antonio Pierce is doing a great job. And hey, he's not afraid to call players out. When they got rid of Marcus Peters, that was a huge step in the right direction. That was a huge step. And then to get Jack Jones for absolutely nothing, and the attitude that Jack Jones brings, and I don't know if you guys know this, but let me throw some stats at you. Malcolm Kuntz stepping up big since Antonio Pierce has become a head coach. And the duo right there with him, Malcolm Kuntz and Max Crosby, since week 18, 14 sacks, right? And 74 pressures. So they're going that. Since Antonio Pierce has become the Raider head coach, number 1 in points allowed per game, Tony. Number 1 in points allowed per game. 15 points right there. I mean, it helps when you play some of the bad teams. Defensive touchdowns. They got 4. 2. Yeah, that's number 1. Sacks. The defensive line has been stepping up. 4th in sacks. They're 6th in takeaways. So the defense is there. The defense is there. They're not. I don't know, Tony. Maybe they're a couple pieces away. Maybe I'm just blowing it up. But I mean, a couple of these other games go their way. The Minnesota game goes their way. We're looking at a possible playoff team.
If you guys beat 3-0, that loss is the one that you guys will look back and go, oh wait, we should have been in the playoffs. Antonio Pierce should have coached this team and rallied this team to the playoffs after an abysmal start under a guy that clearly nobody wanted. Because like, one of the things that none of the metrics will ever be able to study is the team invested in what is happening right there? And that is the biggest problem. When you lose a majority of people, it doesn't matter how talented they are. You cannot force them to play at what their peak performance level is, because your heart has to be in it. You're playing such a violent game. And if the opportunity is, hey, I might have to spend my entire offseason rehabbing, like, they're not interested in risking that level of injury on every single play, that harm, that bodily harm. And that will take you from what you could be to just being average NFL capable and talent. Everybody says like, oh, well, this tape is out. It's like the only thing they have to judge you on for further jobs. Sure. But your agent could also put together good tape, which is what got you into the NFL or what got you paid or whatever it is. It's not like this is the only thing they're going to see. You could just say like, oh, my guy was dealing with this injury and whatever else. Like, you get new life in the building. That's what Antonio Pierce brings. He brings that sort of what Dan Campbell has brought to the Lions, where it's like, hey, this is about you guys. This is not about me. And I think that we have a problem where a lot of coaches are out there and it's like, it's about me. It's not about you. It's about these guys that go out there and are risking serious injury for the entertainment of bums like us that just sit around and love to watch this. Like, that's what this is about. It's about a game, and you have to be ready and fired up to go play this game, or you're just not going to be good. And he's been able to bring that back to the Raiders, and it sucks. Although Christmas Day, what a fucking treat that was. That was so much fun. I've never had that much fun watching a Raiders game in my life. Way to go.
And Antonio Pierce, as soon as he stepped in and did the press conference, I'm from Compton. I watched the team. I'm bringing back the Raider attitude. And even after the Chiefs win, they asked him about, hey, what's your resume? And he goes, hey, my resume is on the field. It's on the grass. I'll show you what I do out here. And maybe he doesn't check those boxes as normal head coaches. But if you got somebody that's checking the boxes with the players, that stands out more than anything else, right? And he said, we're the Raiders. We're going to smoke our shit, and we're going to talk our shit. And when he said that right there, Tony, come on. Raider fans we're one of the most hated fan bases because why? We don't go fucking away. We're not like the Niner fans where when they're winning, we're out here, and when they're losing, we disappear. We're the fucking Raiders. Like Mike said it, they're 7-8. The Raiders are 7-8, and we're running our fucking mouth like we're the best team in the league because that's what we fucking do. And that when we got a head coach like that has our back and knows what the fans are about, you're gonna have that community and bring everybody back together. And sometimes just having the fun and having the heart, Tony. Sometimes you see that go in the right direction. Look at to bring in another team. Look at Sean McVay and what he's doing in Los Angeles right now. Not a lot of great talent down there. Not a team that should have been winning, but you have the right coach and the right culture, and you're moving in the right direction. So coaching does matter, and bringing it in. And Tony, you said Harbaugh, right? You said anybody. I think there's two. I don't know. I'm not a big Harbaugh fan. He can go to the Chargers. He can do all that shit. Bye. See you later, Harbaugh. But the one coach that I would say that if the Raiders can get, and this is the only coach that I would probably take over Antonio Pierce at the time, because if you're, like you said, if you're going to go Ben Johnson, Frank Smith, or something like that, you might as well stay with Antonio Pierce, is Mike Tomlin. If they could pull Mike Tomlin away from Pittsburgh, that would be the only head coach that I would take.
Yeah, I didn't put him in there, right? Because Belichick, you're not going to go back-to-back Patriot coaches. That would be the most foolish thing ever. But if you just look around like where the league is, there you can do it with X's and O's for sure. Because Kevin Stefanski's doing that with Cleveland and everything that they've gone through. And you can see guys that can do it with attitude. There are multiple ways, but whatever it is, you have to be able to get a bunch of grown-up millionaires to believe that sacrifice is worth it. And there are multiple ways you can do it, but it is the toughest thing to do, is saying like, hey, you have to make all these sacrifices and you could still end up being hurt and injured and having to rehab the entire offseason, and we'll see your ass back here again in July and August, and you'll start this shit over again.
Yeah, and I think that what Joe's speaking on about being able to lead these guys, it's different nowadays. It comes from the fact that these guys are coming into it as millionaires now. Like, respecting your coach and listening to your coach and everything he tells you to do and getting that coach to play you is no longer the rite of passage to make millions of dollars in this sport. You can make millions of dollars in this sport by being a star at the previous level, and you can make hundreds of thousands when you're not even a star at the previous level at this point in time. So I think that's where the attitude is changing, and coaches kind of have to adjust and realize, like, these guys, they do need us as much as they did before, but they don't feel like they need us as much as they did before. And they're still 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that are now rich with as much money that they could dream of in certain situations. It's interesting. And what's impressed me most, Joe, go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to say, that's the trick, though, is getting people to believe and remember that this is more, it's more than money.
Yep.
Because, like, you play this game for free. Like your whole life, pretty much. And then now, yes, in college, guys are getting paid and legally getting paid. Guys have been getting paid in college forever. Just let's go get drunk, sodium pentothal to all those Alabama teams that were getting paid for so many years. Come on, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones. Don't tell me you guys weren't getting huge bags full of cash. If you can convince them that they're playing for each other, right? The man next to them and all of those things, and the money will come, then you got it made. Like, that's the trick. Yeah. That's the goal of every coach.
And that's what's most impressive to me about Pierce in the situation is he's not only doing that, but doing that with someone who, in my opinion, I don't think is a starting caliber quarterback, Joe. I don't know what your opinion is on Aiden O'Connell as of today, but I think that he's a guy that maybe you keep around to be the backup to whoever you're going to bring in this offseason. But I don't think that you're getting starting caliber QB play and still winning games with just the defense. I mean, Devontae Adams had one reception for 3 yards in that game?
Yeah, Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass for 3/4 of the game. That's even a greater stat that you can bring up.
Blown him out. They would have blown him out.
Here's
with a competent quarterback.
Here's something I think that is like a perfect match. And Joe might not like this, but I think the Raiders could win a lot of games like this. Baker Mayfield. You don't have to give him a ton of money, but he's going to have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers out there. I think Mayer's becoming a good tight end. If they can't draft get a good quarterback in the draft, but free agency opens up, if he can get one of those like Geno Smith type deals where he comes in, you're going to get somebody else that is going to embrace the Raider way, that's going to be fun, that's going to get the fan base hyped up, and he's going to put points on the board. Like Baker Mayfield in a different circumstance where the team isn't choking away games would probably be in the MVP conversation. I'm not saying a front runner or win it, but Baker Mayfield has been playing lights out football again for like the second time in 4 seasons. And he would be, I feel like, a personality match and a good enough player to have the Raiders winning 10, 11 games next year.
You know who's also a great personality match, Tony, with the experience on teams like this? Bring Derek Carr back for cheaper. Come on, Joe.
Derek Carr. He ain't the
I don't know
guy.
if you guys remember the offseason. In the offseason, if it wasn't Josh McDaniels, if it wasn't for him going for his fit and Jimmy G, in the offseason, I threw 2 names out there as a bridge gap quarterback. One was Baker Mayfield. The other one was Jacoby Brissett. I thought both of them would have been a good fit for the Raiders this season. But you already know why they went Jimmy G and all that shit for that. But yeah, those were the 2. And Baker, I love him. Tony, I don't know about you, but me, I love Baker Mayfield. I love the way that he plays his game. I still got this bullshit helmet that you gave me. So I don't know how many Raider fans would hate on him if he came back, but I would take Baker Mayfield because if you draft a quarterback or not, I think it showed that you should sit a quarterback for the first year. Everybody's on the CJ Stroud hype train and stuff like that. But how many quarterbacks have benefited from sitting a year? I think it's better to let them sit a year.
I think it depends on the mental makeup. If they can handle being 1-15, then it's okay. But if they can't handle that, like if they don't have the psyche, the shoulders that it takes to have a year like Bryce Young is having, like I think Bryce Young's going to be fine. If Ben Johnson ends up taking all that money that David Tepper is going to throw out there to him, and he takes that job in Carolina, like I think they, make a trade. They bring in T. Higgins. Now all of a sudden it's like, or they bring in Brandon Ayuk, whoever they can sign free agent wise this offseason. They bring in a legit number 1 for Bryce Young, and they bring in a real big time play caller like Ben Johnson. All of a sudden Bryce Young is going to look like, oh shit, he really was worth the number 1 pick, because what has Bryce done this year that everybody thought was going to be his downfall? He's still battling. He's still standing upright. He's not injured. This guy's taking massive hits every week. I think this is a huge win for Bryce Young this year. So like they'll be fine out there. And like you said, the rookie quarterback, yes, there is value in getting a chance to sit behind a good veteran. But it depends on who that veteran is. Like it's not just sitting behind Drew Lock, I don't think gives you a ton of value. But sitting behind maybe somebody like Jacoby Brissett or sitting behind like Dorian Thompson-Robinson is probably learning a lot from Joe Flacco right now.
Yeah. Joe, dream scenario goes down. Your dream quarterback comes to the Raiders. Who is it?
We were talking about this earlier off the air, but if we can get Justin Fields in Vegas, I would take it. And then after that, I think you would look at the draft. I think depending on the price for Justin Fields, and if the Raiders aren't in the top 10 and Justin Fields is sitting there and they're like, hey, we'll trade him to you. And Champ Kelly, if he's the GM, he has a great relationship with the Bears already because that's where he came from. And I would think that's the way you would go. And I think the players would back that. I mean, Tony hit on it earlier that Zamir White was caught. He might be the Raiders running back next year, right? Because Josh Jacobs has that 1-year deal. And Zamir White was caught this week liking posts from Justin Fields and kind of like recruiting him already. So I think I think you want to bring excitement to it. But then again, I'm sitting here thinking and listening to Tony talk, and I'm like, the NFL is kind of a 2-quarterback league now. You kind of need a number one guy and then a guy who, because it doesn't seem like every quarterback is making it through the season now. It seems like they go down for a game or 2 or 3 games, so you need a good, competent backup quarterback now too.
The season's a game longer too, so everyone's just taking a little bit more beating each year, just a little bit. That's full circle right there, Joe. If Justin Fields ends up a Raider, because you were crowning Justin Fields out of that draft class. I remember you were pretty high on him back then. And speaking of full circle, let's full circle this topic.
It's a circle, Tony. It's a circle.
Yeah. Let's get
Put
a
a
circle
quarter, goes
of
up,
life
down, and
going
around.
here. Now let's talk about how
Not
Mahomes
a triangle.
has looked frustrated all year. The Chiefs have been struggling. I feel like Kelsey hasn't been as dominant play in, play out as he's been in previous seasons. The weapons have obviously been inconsistent to just flat out bad at times. We're seeing cracks in the Chiefs' armor this year. It sucks that no one is like right there on their ass to make them pay for it. But Tony, are the Chiefs still Super Bowl contenders this year?
Yes and no, right? Like they are because they have Patrick Mahomes, but they aren't because they haven't shown us all year that they're legit Super Bowl contenders, but all it takes is a couple of weeks in a row. They finish these final 2 weeks where they start humming again and building confidence. Cause again, that's what this is. Like all it's going to take is a little bit of confidence with the right genius play caller and everything. Like it could be there. I heard a take from somebody. I wish I would have remembered who it was, but it was the loss of Eric Bieniemy wasn't necessarily with the X's and O's. It was more about him being able to be bad cop, where he was the guy that kind of like got on the asses of the players who weren't performing, and he was really on them. And when you don't have that guy to balance out the nice guy bullshit that you're going to get from Patrick and Andy, and somebody needs to, like Mike and I talked about this, his outburst at the end of the Bills game was strictly directed at the frustration he has with what he has as his wide receivers. And I think all year, if you kind of go through what he's been having to kind of overcome, which is the downside of what that is, like you look at it and you go, did Patrick Mahomes really need them to go spend on Jawan Taylor or whatever? Should they have found a way to just like pony up and pay Tyreek Hill or pony up, like this offseason, if the Chiefs are not in the market for one of these big time wide receivers, I will be the happiest fan ever. Like if they really try to go back and solve this shit through the draft again and pass up on this wide receiver free agent class, which I think is extremely underrated, like I will be so happy. I don't want them to end up with like Mike Evans, like one of the older guys, but I definitely don't want them to go get Brandon Ayuk under contract. I don't want them to go get even Nico Collins. Like I don't want them to get any of these guys that are coming up as free agents. But that's kind of like where they're at. So are they Super Bowl contenders? If you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I can't count you out. Like I just can't. But again, it's like, would I pick them in a game against the Ravens? I don't even know if I'd pick them in a game against the Bills. Like, or the Dolphins in a rematch. Like that Dolphins game was pretty close. And you're going to get Tyreek Hill, like getting a second chance to try to go off against that team. Like, I just don't know if there's many teams that I would pick because of the way that the offense is struggling.
On top of it all, on top of it all, they're becoming road warriors. Like they might have to go every game on the road in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
But the one thing you can't count the Kansas City Chiefs out is because they have a good defense, right? Pretty good, damn solid defense. And that when it comes playoff time, what always starts winning games for you is your defense. And you have Andy Reid and the experience that team has going into the playoffs, where some teams get to the playoffs for the first time and it's like, oh, and they forget that what got them there. And for some reason, they always find a damn running game in the playoffs. It's like once you get in there, the Chiefs find a way to make the game smaller. Yes, they don't have the explosive plays like they had, and they can't score. It doesn't seem like they can score within a minute like they used to. But it is still Patrick Mahomes, and he makes the plays when he needs to. But this, I mean, I thought it was crazy that this is the first time in his career that they've lost 6 games in a year. 6 games. And shit, I'm lucky if we win 6 games in a year. We're talking about them losing 6 games. And it's frustrating. I mean, when you go from winning a bunch of games and you're accustomed to winning and you start to lose and things aren't going your way, you see it. You see Travis Kelce throwing his helmet. You see Patrick Mahomes crying. It doesn't seem like they're getting the calls that they're accustomed to, right? We've been calling it out for years that the Chiefs, every top team, it's not just the Chiefs, but the top team in the league seems like they get beneficial calls than anybody else. And it seems, hey, that when the offensive offsides happened on the Chiefs, no, it was like, oh, what the hell? They shouldn't have called it. But it was a penalty. It should have been called. So it's just like, when things aren't going your way, it starts to just snowball and get bigger and bigger. And when you're winning, you can cover a lot of stuff up, right? And people don't look at the flaws that you have, but when you're losing, boy, does those flaws look out. And like Kadarius Toney, he gets a lot of hate for him, but when he's winning and they're doing their things and he's on the top of his game, it's good for the Chiefs. But when he makes those mistakes, holy shit! But to go out there and say I'm going to crown the Chiefs. I don't want to see the Chiefs as AFC, so I'm happy with them falling down. I'm happy with the Chiefs. I would be happy to say right now, hell no, the Chiefs aren't going to the Super Bowl, and hell no, the Chiefs aren't Super Bowl caliber team. So yeah, I'll ride that one. But like Tony said, they got Andy Reid. God damn it.
I used to pray for times like this, and now the Chargers are completely freaking out of the race. Last year, why couldn't this happen? I would rather watch any team other than the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Any team in the whole league.
It's definitely frustrating as a Chargers fan to see what's going on this year, but I don't necessarily think that this isn't just a 1 year, like
they're figure out.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't think it's a 1 year fix. I think they're definitely better if they go get a wide receiver or whatever, but they have issues with multiple things going on. Yeah. One of the other things that could be great for everybody in the AFC West, let's throw Steve Spagnuolo's name out there for some coaching. You know, like let's get rid of Steve Spagnuolo to one of these other teams that need a head coach. Like all of a sudden, defenses tend to not look as dominant this in a second year following losing a defensive coordinator. So let's get Spagnuolo out of there, send him somewhere else, and they don't solve the wide receiver problem. Chiefs in last place next year.
Well, and you got to think that Chris Jones is going to leave in the offseason, right? So that's another big loss. And I'm starting to really, truly believe this, and maybe it's just the Raider hate in me. I think Travis Kelce's going to retire at the end of this year. I think him and his brother walk away from the game.
That's what I was about to say. That's what I was exactly about to say, is that he got the big paycheck from Chunky Campbell's Soup. He got the big paycheck from Pfizer. He's pretty much married to Taylor Swift at this fucking point. Why not retire with your brother in the same year? That's something historic right there. 2 Hall of Famers walk away from the game, arm in arm, straight into mama's arms. Aw, how cute. Never see Travis Kelce play again.
I'm all for it, but I think there's some records out there that people aren't talking about that he wants to go get.
I also think that they're the type, that team full with those families and those people around each other, they're the type to want to actually have like that last dance situation where they're
he's not gonna
rig the Super Bowl for us, all that stuff.
I don't think he would leave Pat just high and dry either. Like I think that he would say, like, if Patrick was like, hey, you can't do this, we're not ready for you to go yet, like I need you out there, big guy. One thing I do think we could see is Travis Kelce says, you know what? I don't want to go spend 4 weeks, because Andy Reid is one of those few coaches that still does the away training camp where they go away and they go to like some camp with like shitty beds and like they do an actual like old school training camp. I could see a scenario where Kelsey's like, hey, I'm only coming for 1 week of this shit.
So
yeah, I'm not showing up the whole thing.
I saw this morning and I just found it again. It says Travis Kelce has appeared in more commercials during the NFL season so far than any other celebrity, appearing on screen in 375 commercials aired through December 11th. So he's
cashing in. He's cashing in on the name value and the notoriety that he's getting at this moment in time in his career, which is maybe on the level of any tight end ever. I mean, what tight end has gotten as much like name brand building as Travis Kelce is getting at this very second?
I think he's got like 5 national commercials right now, 6 national commercials. So if they're all running, these are just spots that are running during NFL games. Joe?
Yeah. During NFL games.
During NFL games, yeah. So they're all gonna be towards, like Pfizer, that one's gonna work whenever. But like some of these other, like the Chunky Campbell Soup ones are always gonna, that's a big spot. Donovan McNabb had those for a while where it was like he was just on every commercial break. It was Donovan, and his mom and Chunky Campbell and all that shit. So like it's definitely like it's easy, but I don't think that the commercials, what people don't understand is like that doesn't really affect you. Like he shoots these commercials in 1 or 2 days in the off season and then they run, and it's like he's not really being distracted by that. Like to go shoot these commercials for like a 2-day period somewhere and make a bunch of money. Like if I had to say like one of the things that's like really distracting is being in love. It doesn't matter what job you're in, but being in love is a massive distraction, because if you're trying to focus on something and not even like, let's take being in love out of it, like being sprung, that new fresh sort of like whatever it is. Because I love my wife, but I'm not at the point where I'm like distracted by her. If I had to go do something, like it's not that. Is what I'm saying making sense? Like, yeah. When you have that new love, you are thinking about it all the time, and that's taking away from your study time, your practice. You might be there, but you're not as invested because you're just thinking about that so much. And I do think that's a bit of like can be a hindrance to anybody. It's just like, and that's just human nature. Like, that's fine. Like we've all been in that situation. You try to go to work. It doesn't matter what job you have. You could be a banker. You're not going to be as good at like making deals and doing the kind of stuff you need to be doing, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's on somebody's like loan agreement or something, because you're thinking about this person that you love that's not in your vicinity. That's distracting you a little bit. So I think that's an issue.
Got me doing things I never do.
Yes, exactly. Turn it up, run it back.
Man, and on top of it all, he has a thriving podcast. I heard. I've never listened because fuck Travis.
I've listened to it. It's funny. I'm a big. I like the Kelces. Outside of him being a Chief, they're funny. It's a good duo. The two of them.
Yeah, 230-yard game's been real funny, Tony. Real funny.
Again, has nothing.
He scored 4 touchdowns on the Raiders last year, so I'm glad he didn't do it again this year.
He can't.
Keep him sprung. Let's throw Beyonce at him next or something.
But you know what? It's good. It's good to see this. Like, I hope the Chargers are able to pull it off in Week 18 and get. It's good to see it because the Chiefs have been running through the AFC West and they've been winning. They're running through the whole league, and they've been cocky a little bit. Like last year, pissed me. It was the most I've ever been pissed off watching the Raider game, and they ran that ring around the rosy bullshit play in our stadium. Like, come on, like, dude, that's some bullshit. That's some bullshit. Like, and then you saw it on Christmas Day. What was the downfall to the Chiefs? They tried doing trick ass plays, handing it off to Patrick Mahomes. I think they just, when things aren't going your way, you try to push it and go harder, and you end up fucking it up more. And I think that's what Kansas City's doing right now. They need to go back to their basic stuff and get it going. And I don't want to see them succeed. I don't. Trust me. But I just think they need to go back to what was working for them and just stop the bullshit, stop the nonsense, and just go back. Just let Patrick play his game. Don't bring all these dumbass trick plays in.
They
And
need
weirdly-
Pacheco to get healthy is what they need.
That's what I was about to say. Weirdly enough, 10 could be the guy that softens up the defense for him. But all right, enough talking about the Chiefs and the Raiders. It was a ton of fun. I enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, you want to talk about the Chargers? Max Duggan back from the practice squad.
Rookie of the year, Max Duggan to you, which is what we're talking about next. Who is the current rookie of the year? CJ Stroud still is ahead in the odds-on favorites to win it. Gibbs is actually in second right now with Puka Nacua at third. In my opinion, I think that Stroud is potentially being passed unless the Houston Texans, who they have a shot, win their division. I think that you give this fucking award to Puka Nacua.
Yes. No doubt about it. CJ Stroud is the same thing for MVP. When Tyreek Hill got his injury, he's out of it. When you're missing games, you can't do it. Puka Nacua is the offensive player of the year, a rookie of the year right there. He is a badass player, and he came out of nowhere. Like, that's it. That's the rookie right there. That's their offensive rookie of the year, and I don't think there's any doubt about it.
He's going to break the single-season receiving yard record most likely by a rookie ever. And the big one to me, especially on a team where you play with Cooper Kupp, and you had to fill those shoes of Cooper Kupp for a percentage of the season, that the Rams went on a run, and actually that run is the reason why they are in position to make the playoffs right now. But the more impressive record to me that he's going to break the reception record. He's going to have 105, 110 receptions this year, maybe more. He's at 96 right now.
Yeah. He's gonna have more. He's gonna break the rookie record. I think the rookie record is Anquan Bolden's.
Jalen Waddle had him. Jalen Waddle 104, I think, is the record by one on Bolden.
I didn't know that. Good for Jalen Waddle. I do kind of remember that. Wasn't that the dump down season a few years ago?
Right before they got Tyreek.
Yeah.
If Tua held the ball for like 3 seconds, he's done for the season, like every single time.
I'm going to say that if the season ended right now, it would be Nacua. But there's 2 weeks left for CJ Stroud to win this division. And he doesn't even need to win the division. If he gets them in the playoffs and they end up 10-7 or something, I don't know what I think they're 8-7 right now.
They get 10-7.
If they finish 10-7 and they get a playoff spot, he's rookie of the year. Like, because that's not it. But if he doesn't finish the year strong and they finish 8-9, it's a great story. But the Rams make it in, and Puka Nacua is shattering the records of either future Hall of Famers or past Hall of Famers or whatever. That to me is it, because a lot of times too, wide receivers, you see somebody like Jamar Chase, where I don't think they're necessarily instrumental in a lot of other stuff. Like Puka Nacua is part of the run game. Like and I know that voters won't factor that in, but if you like watching football, and you go see some of the designs where he has to be involved in springing big runs, like Nacua is a football player, and I would vote him if it ended today. And whichever one of these teams make the playoffs, that's who I'd give the award to. If they both make it, I would give it to the quarterback.
Let me throw this at you, Tony. CJ Stroud comes back, does good in the next 2 weeks. Houston wins it. Just plays average, plays like he's doing right now, wins the division. They're going to the playoffs, right? Puka Nacua has a 100-yard game this week. And then in week 18 against the Niners, he has the game-winning touchdown to beat the Niners and make the Niners lose home field advantage. And the Rams are going to the playoffs. Now which one?
I'm still going to lean with the Texans, because to overcome and be a playoff team, like that to me it's tougher, because the Rams will get in with 9 wins or whatever. The Texans are going to have to win 10 games. He's going to have been the winner of 9 of those 10 games, like outside of the one Case Keenum miracle. Like, he's going to have been the catalyst for a higher hurdle. I think the one thing that's going to hurt Stroud is the injury isn't going to allow him to break some of Herb's records from a few years ago. Like those 2 games off, I think really hurt him in putting up the touchdown and yards numbers to pass from Herbert's rookie year. I think. I don't know. I haven't checked in on a while.
He's not reaching it. There's no way. But yeah,
Mike needs that because that's the only argument Mike has about Herbert is the rookie year. So Mike
and the 5,040 touchdown sophomore year as well, and the freaking 4,530 touchdown year last year, and this year he had a great year as well, even in his worst season. But anyways, we're not talking about Justin Herbert, even though this is very similar. Remember, the year that Justin Herbert won that Rookie of the Year award, there was another receiver breaking records, and they went with the quarterback over the receiver, Justin Jefferson. Almost same scenario. But what separates in this situation is like you're saying, Tony. CJ Stroud right now sits at 20 passing touchdowns, 11 shy of Herbert's record. I think he sits at around 3,600 or 3,800 passing yards, still 600, 700 shy, which I'm not going to rule out that he has 700 yards in 2 games with some of the games he's had this year, but it's not very likely that he's actually shattering those records. And that to me is why we got to put Puka in, because Puka is going to be at the top of these lists in multiple categories now, and you got to do it. But that is what hurts the receiver so much, is that is the one thing that Puka's not doing. He's not scoring touchdowns. I think he only has 5 touchdowns this year, and CJ Stroud's going to finish with around 25 probably. And I know it's quarterback to receiver. But that's what the voters are looking at, like who made the bigger impact, who scored more points. I think it should be Puka Nacua, as long as the Rams don't choke this away and completely miss the playoffs because of what a key piece he was in literally saving the Rams season. I thought the Rams may be on the clock first this year, or on the clock third. That's how low I was on them. And here they are, a sneaky team heading into the NFC bracket.
And again, like, I just can't. I made the comment earlier in the pod about Baker and Stafford. Like, I just don't. If these teams won a couple more of these close games and they were viable for the division, like, these guys are playing outstanding quarterback. Like,
Stafford to Vegas would be awful. Stafford to Vegas would be a nightmare.
I know everybody doesn't want it, and Tony would not want to see it. I would love to see the Rams make the playoffs and go to Detroit, and Matthew Stafford knocks off the Detroit Lions in the playoffs.
I'd be fine with that. I do root for the Rams, right? But there will be no team harder this postseason that I will be rooting for than the Detroit Lions. Like, I will be. My grandfather's 92 years old, and I got a video on Christmas of him in his like old folks' home. I had some family go visit him, and he's sitting there still watching fucking Lions games every Sunday. Like, this man deserves to see the Lions do something. Like, come on.
Now I'm rooting for the Lions too.
No, you're rooting for the Ravens, Mike. Everybody saw your video come out.
You can't pick one team in each conference? Come on, Joe.
You root for the Cowboys too? Come on.
Okay, so 3 teams total. That's 3 out of 14. I'm still not quite all in on any team here, but the Ravens.
You know what I'm rooting for? CJ Stroud to throw for 800 yards and 12 touchdowns in the next 2 games. Let's go, CJ. Sling that damn ball.
If he does that, then he's definitely the Rookie of the Year. But moving from one award to another award, let's transition this into a conversation about the MVP race. Tony, or Joe, actually, I'll let you go first on this, Joe, because I know you love talking about these 49ers. Did Brock Purdy just fall out of the MVP race completely?
First of all, Brock Purdy should have never fucking been in that conversation. He should have been out of it. And I've been telling people for weeks, Brock Purdy is not even the best player on his team. He's probably not even top 3 on his team. And you gotta put him in there. And you're like, Brock Purdy's gonna be the MVP. Brock Purdy's gonna be the MVP. How? I thought maybe he was trying to help out Trent Williams in the last game, and Trent Williams getting the MVP award by allowing him to get more tackles. You know, he got like 3 or 4 tackles on interceptions in that game, so that kind of helped him out. But it showed CMC. I don't care what you say about Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson didn't win that game against. He did a great job against the 49ers, but who won that game? The defense won that game. The defense is for the has been great for the Ravens, and I've said it for years, Tony, since Lamar Jackson's been there. When the Ravens defense is going, the Ravens are going. And we saw when a lot of the players got hurt last year for the Ravens started to fall off on that defense. So the Ravens defense is there. But I still think the MVP is coming out of San Francisco, and I think it has to be Christian McCaffrey. You've seen what Christian McCaffrey does when he's on that field and what the big difference he is. And he's been the MVP of the league for many years, even when he was on a crappy Carolina team. Christian McCaffrey is a game changer and an elite talent that we're not going to get a lot, but it's always a quarterback award. So they're always trying to push it to to a quarterback. And Barry Sanders, I don't know if you guys saw that Barry Sanders came out earlier and he goes, yeah, CMC should win it too. Barry Sanders, the great Lions running back, is back in CMC, but he goes, hey, even when I had my great year in 1999, they made me co-MVP with Brett Favre. He goes, so he goes, I can see Christian McCaffrey winning it as a co-MVP with another quarterback. So maybe Christian McCaffrey gets some BS like that too.
And well, when I first saw that, Joe, the Barry Sanders quote, I was thinking like, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Lamar Jackson, CMC, co-MVPs. That's dope.
So when that happened too, Favre had already won back-to-back MVPs. He was the biggest player on the planet, right? Like that was a different circumstance. Lamar Jackson is not at Favre's like legend status level. Like that was more of like, hey, Favre had another really, really good season. And Barry Sanders also just rushed for 2,000 yards in 14 games, essentially. That season, he started off the first 2 games, had 53 yards. And then in the final 14 games of the year, rushed for 2,000 yards. Nobody had done that since like O.J. Simpson had like a 2,000-yard season in 14 games. Like I'm getting sidetracked here. Nobody wants to talk about old school football with me. But in current football right now, Mike and I did a video earlier this year talking MVPs in like week 7 or 8. CMC was at the top of my board. He has never left. It's never been there. I'm not here to disparage Brock Purdy because I do think he is a top 12 quarterback, right? Like right now in the way things are set up, there are some limitations, but we have to remember like there are only ever going to be a handful of guys that we should expect when things are shitty and things aren't perfect, that they're going to go and do it. Otherwise, everybody would have that quarterback. It wouldn't make Patrick Mahomes special or Josh Allen special or Jalen Hurts sometimes when things and shit is down there or Herbert in situations where there's no receivers out there. Like if those situations, if everybody was elevating their play in catastrophic circumstances, it wouldn't make it special for that to happen. So like Brock Purdy's in a great situation. I think he's a very good quarterback. And I am over talking about game manager versus this and that and whatever else. Like he's very good. But if we're talking about who the difference makers are in that game, it is Lamar Jackson and Christian McCaffrey. Like I disagree a little bit with what Joe said about the Ravens defense. I do think obviously you need to have a good defense to get things going. But like, even when the defenses were getting injured and beat up or whatever, and Lamar Jackson was still on the field, like they were still finding ways to win games. The one thing that drives me nuts about Lamar Jackson is sometimes he just gets careless with the football. He just starts running around and carrying it out here for no reason. Like when he's determined and his head is down and it's just like, I'm crushing everybody, he's unstoppable. Like the Ravens, should be on a path to go to the Super Bowl. They should take care of business against the Dolphins this weekend. They should be sitting people over the next couple of weeks, and they should be playing in Las Vegas in February.
And Lamar's having the best year of his career, in my opinion, as a passer, without Mark Andrews. So that just shows how much hard work he put in this year, even though he was arguing for money and battling for contracts. And you guys know what a big Lamar Jackson fan I am. He is now the odds-on favorite to win his second MVP award. But I think we have a unanimous sweep here. I also would give this thing to CMC. I had an argument with my uncle about this, like just recently, because he's a big Brock Purdy fan. He's a 49er fan. He was saying that running backs don't win the award. And I told him, like, there's a number that running backs hit where they won the award. That's 25 touchdowns. And he's hit that. Danny Tomlinson. Who else? Who's before the league? Sean Alexander, Adrian Peterson. And there was even someone else in that little era. Terrell Davis won MVP, I think.
He didn't win regular season MVP, no.
Maybe as a runner-up or something. But yeah, it seems like the mark where a running back goes from he's just the running back, not going to win MVP, even though he had a great season, to you're the MVP. It seems like it's 25 touchdowns. The CMC's broken that. You know the yardage is there. You don't got to argue about that and the receptions and all that and the averages. So and he's carrying maybe the best team in football. I mean, the second best team in football. Second best team in football.
Hang on. I think maybe, can somebody look that up? I think Terrell Davis may have won an MVP.
I know the Chiefs running back did. What was his name again?
Terrell Davis, Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis.
Yeah.
Marshall Falk.
Marshall Falk.
There we go.
Sean Alexander, and Adrian Peterson, LaDainian Tomlinson too. You guys said so. Those are your running backs right there.
Priest Holmes never won one.
And Thurman Thomas. But the name that this is what's pissing me off. This is why sometimes I don't listen to watch ESPN and some of these bullshit thing. The name that keeps getting thrown out there, and even fucking Aaron Rodgers threw it out there on Pat McAfee the other day. Josh Allen. He said Josh Allen is the MVP of the league right now. I don't think you can be the MVP and throw 15 interceptions. And I understand it, but a lot of people are looking at the touchdowns. Oh, he has 27 touchdowns. You're looking at touchdowns. And maybe that's what's going to hurt Lamar overall is he only has 19 touchdowns throwing. But I don't think people fear Josh Allen. Like I think they know they have to go in there and make Josh Allen make the mistakes. But I think you fear Lamar Jackson. I think you fear Christian McCaffrey, and those are the two guys that you're looking to stop. And I think when you're looking at the MVP award, you're looking at somebody, if you take away from their team, and I'm not going to say that if you take Josh Allen away from the Buffalo Bills, they're not good, but I think you could put somebody else up there that could throw, that can game. If you put a game manager up there, I think Buffalo is still hanging out around in that division.
And you include fumbles, his turnover total goes over 20.
I hope you never look at Favre's interception totals from his MVP seasons.
Anyway, that'll be interesting.
But that's a different time. Like people are like, Rich Gannon was MVP, right? And I go back and look at Rich Gannon's stats, and Rich Gannon, like if you put his stats up against like MVPs now, you're like, that was not a great fucking season. I understand he was the MVP, but those are totally different. Like 26 touchdowns was his MVP season. Like,
then back then that was leading the league probably.
Who was the wide receivers? Tim Brown and Jerry Rice. Like it was Brock Purdy.
So I think the other thing too that's been going on with MVP is it's become a very emotional award for a lot of these people, right? Like Emmanuel Acho has an MVP vote this year. Like every week he switches who the MVP is going to be. And like he'll be like, in my estimation, this guy Dak Prescott was his MVP. And then he gets blown out by the Bills and he's not it. And he's like, Brock Purdy is my MVP. Brock Purdy loses. He's like, Lamar Jackson is my MVP. Now, if Lamar Jackson loses, next week he'll come out and he'll be backing Tua, which has always been his guy all along. So he's setting it up to push this narrative. He's just an example of what MVP voting has come, is these final games of the regular season, people start saying, these are the games that matter the most. And it's like, they are in a way, but like also think about the games at the beginning of the year that some of these guys squeaked out and won, which put them in the position to be getting into the playoffs. Like taking care of, when you don't take care of business in the first half of the season, like the Raiders didn't, now look at where the Raiders are. If the Raiders take advantage of that in the first half of the season, we might be talking about a guy like Max Crosby. We might be going, no defensive player in the last 15 years has played as many snaps as Max Crosby. No defensive player has been blah, blah, EPA, all these other dumb fucking nerd number stats that the people love to throw out to me. It's like, just watch the game. Max Crosby is a nightmare for everybody in the run game, in the pass game. Like, he's on the same level of disruption as some of the great players that we've ever seen play on the defensive line. But he plays for the Raiders, and they suck. And that's just the sad reality of the situation.
Well, it's consistency, Tony. Who has been the most consistent player and the best player for their team over the whole season? Not just 2 or 3 games, 4 games, or not when it matters, not on prime time. And it's CMC and it's Tyreek Hill. Those are the 2 guys that like you would think. And I think, I mean, you can still put Tyreek Hill up there, especially if Tyreek Hill gets 2,000 yards receiving. I mean, it's going to take a little bit in the next 2 games for him to get that. But I think those are the 2 guys that you're looking at, and it's easy to go with the quarterback. I understand and that's what the NFL wants. You want to promote the quarterback position because that's the number 1 position in football. But come on, I think we've talked about this before, and it's another conversation, and I got to go right now. But it's something that we've talked about before. We're making these quarterbacks today in our head elite and better than they are. And we're really just pushing average quarterbacks and making them better than making their stats seem better than they are.
That's why this year is an opportunity for the NFL and the voters to do something unique and give us a non-quarterback MVP. I'd love it. Joe, before you go, let's just wrap this whole thing up, actually. But before you go, real quick, rapid fire, top 3 teams in the NFL right now, in your opinion.
Raiders. That's it. That's how simple it is.
Tony?
Nailed it.
Top 3 teams.
Top 3 teams. I'm going with the Ravens, the Niners, and here's one, the Cleveland Browns.
That's my list right there, Tony. I thought I was going to be the guy that shocks everybody with the Browns at 3.
You guys know that I have this like weird affinity for the Cleveland Browns, and
they deserve it, man. How they're playing right now?
Yeah, they do. I don't cheer for them as much when Deshaun Watson is at the helm there. But what's going on with everything and Joe Flacco and injuries, and I'm a little worried about them because they don't seem to be the same team when they play away. But they went to Houston and played pretty solid, which was nice to see. So it would be fun. It would be so much fun to have some playoff matches where we get to see Stafford return to Detroit. Flacco goes back to Baltimore in a matchup. Like, those things to me are why I watch the NFL, to see those moments, because there's got to be so much emotion for those guys to be in that situation and in those moments. And we get to watch it play out, and it's beautiful.
I have the same list. Ravens, 49ers, Browns as well. I want to put the Cowboys in there, but I just love the way that the Browns have been playing, and the Cowboys just
somebody put a stat up about all the top teams and what the top teams, division winners, and what the difference is between them and everything else is they all have had one quarterback all year, except for the Browns, 4 quarterbacks, and they just continue to win no matter who they lost Chubb, they've lost their quarterbacks, and they don't give a damn. They still go out there. And there's been games where we're like, oh, they're the number one defense, and they're getting in shootouts, 38-40 and stuff like that. So they've won big games where shootouts. They've won close games like the Niner game where it's been like little mistakes here and there. It's just the Browns are one of those teams that keep clawing and they do what they need to do to win a game. And that sometimes that's it reminds you kind of that Giants team, that Tom Coughlin team, right, Tony, that beat the undefeated Patriots. It's just one of those teams that just won't go away. And even when wasn't there a couple of games where the Browns were like getting blown out, and we're like, what the hell's up with the Browns? And the second half they come back and win that game. It's so that it's just a testimony to their players and their coaches and what they got going on over there. So yeah, I like you guys. I would agree with you guys right now. The Cleveland Browns are a top 3 team in the NFL, and it's crazy. And they have a chance at being the number 1 seed in the AFC.
It's a weird road, but yes, they still have a chance. But
what if we see the 5-seeded Browns against the 4-seeded Chiefs in round 1? How fun would that be? There you go.
Let's get the Browns versus the Lions Super Bowl. Fuck it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, Lions Browns. That's the Super Bowl we've all dreamed of seeing for our whole lives.
We used to only see that on like PlayStations and Xboxes, but we're gonna Joe Flacco versus Jared Goff in the Super Bowl.
I'm 100% in for that Super Bowl. By the way,
I would watch it. I would love it. I would anything that because that's when it comes down to playoffs. And if my team's not in it, and Mike made a video about that when his Chargers got eliminated, who's going to root for now? You always find a team that you root for, and it always has to be that underdog team. You don't want to see the same teams. You don't want to see Dallas and San Francisco and Baltimore, the teams that are the front runners. You want to see one of these teams come out of nowhere that haven't won, like Cleveland or Detroit, that haven't won in ever, and just come in there and build that fan base up. It would be a great thing, I think, for the NFL. But I mean, for at least for me, a hater and a troll, it would be amazing.
Your videos will be amazing. It would be unbeatable. Well, that's it. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of the MJT Football Podcast. Hope you guys had a good time. Please help us out by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turn on notifications. We like to go live from time to time. Those notifications let you know when we go live, and you can interact with us in the live chat. Let us know in the comments your reactions to some of these topics. Who's winning MVP? Who's winning Rookie of the Year? How do you guys feel about the Raiders beating the Chiefs? And are the Chiefs completely falling apart? And what's the situation looking like with Russell Wilson? Where do you guys think he's going to land? Let us know all those things in the comment section below. Anything else, Tony?
No.
Joe?
And just to let you guys know, if the Raiders come back and win the AFC West, holy shit, I'm not going to stop talking shit. But Guys, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button because even when football season's over, maybe our teams didn't do what we needed in the football season, but we're all Dodger fans, so we're going to be winning another World Series this year.
Yeah, and we'll be here on the channel just like dreaming and hoping for every star player and coach that's available for our teams. It's going to be a fun time. Take me out to the ball game. All right, we'll see you guys.
Raiders.